End users in VoIP Detective are able to pull call reports for a single extension. An end user could be created by an administrator, or if the administrator has allowed it, a person can come to your VoIP Detective installation and register for an account. So let's take a moment and look at the end user experience inside of VoIP Detective. I'm going to click Login. I'm going to put in my end user credentials. And we're going to track calls. So we have 3 reports available as an end user. We have an all calls report. We have an inbound calls. We have an outbound calls. So as the name implies, the all calls report shows both inbound and outbound. And we have a few options on this page. We can show or not show internal calls. We could show or not show local, long distance. 0-second calls are, as they sound, calls that never connect. So for one reason or another, the call never connected. We typically don't show those, and we typically don't show when this extension calls into voicemail, although you could if you wanted to. So we choose our extension, which is going to be ours since we only have access to one, and we can pick a date. We can either manually specify a date, or we could use a relative date range. And when we hit search, we see there are 155 calls. Now you'll notice that some of these numbers have 3 X's on the rightmost side. That's because I've enabled data privacy on my VoIP Detective installation. This is used in many European countries where they have requirements where they must mask a portion of the phone number. So this is something you could enable or disable on your installation. But we have inbound calls, we have outbound calls. We can see the number they called, the number that was called, the number that did the calling. If you live in the United States, you have the option to enable remote locations, which will give you a city and state listing here. Date of call and duration in seconds. So as we scroll down the page towards the bottom, you'll see a graph for the number of calls and the duration of calls for calls shown on this page. We can adjust the time for this search. So if we've decided, hey, we looked at 1 month, now let's look at the last 90 days, we can do that without having to return to the search page. Search for this week, search. So we have this. If you need to export this, we have some options at the bottom. You can export to CSV, to PDF, or to Excel. So if I click on Excel, it gives me a pop-up. You can see the report that's been generated is basically the same information that we saw in the previous window, just in Excel format. You have the ability to export any of the reports you run inside of VoIP Detective. The free version allows for CSV exports. The paid version allows for PDF and Excel exports. So let's go back to the track calls page and let's take a look at the inbound calls report. We have similar options, very similar feel. Let's look for this month. And here you can see we've got a caller, we've got the date of the call, duration, time to answer. This is how long the phone rang before it was handled. Handled could mean voicemail, it could mean forwarded on, it could mean answered by a live person. Final destination is the who ultimately handled the call. This could be a voicemail pilot. This could be an extension. This could be a hunt group. Call legs. This can get confusing, but what it does is it gives information about the call itself and the journey that that call has taken. So when I click on this, I get a pop-up. It tells me the calling number, called number, some technical information, why the call was forwarded. So in this particular case, this call was forwarded for no answer to our voicemail system. And if the call was answered, we can see the call manager end user that was associated with that device. To give a bit more information, here's a call with 2 call legs. This is an outside number called in and was answered. Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. This call called in and they used iDivert to send them to voicemail. We have the same export buttons. And let's go look at finally the outbound calls report. We'll look at this month. And here are the calls that this phone made.